Good morning. This is Victoria Beal with the Ohio LTAP Center, and I'm so pleased to be able to host for you today this session, which is actually being provided through a federal grant that is being administered by the American Road and Transportation Builders Association. We have Robinson Vasquez, who is with us as the presenter for today and tomorrow, and he has a tremendous amount of information in the area of preventing falls during transportation construction that he's going to share with you. So we are glad that you are here in person. And one of the things we'd like to make sure we're able to do is answer your questions. So if you wouldn't mind, as a participant, finding your question box and dropping me a hi or hello in there. I see Mubin has already dropped me a hello, so thank you, Mubin. You get the gold star for being the first one this morning to tell me hi or hello. But I just want to make sure that everyone knows where that question box is, because that is how we're going to be able to take your questions, and I'll be reading those off to Robinson during either the break or at the end of the second hour. So with that, the other thing I want to point out is we do have a couple of handouts in the handouts section of your GoToWebinar panel. And if you were registered as of 5 p.m. yesterday, you should have also received an email from me with links to those documents. I will send them out again afterwards, with also hopefully recordings of today's session and tomorrow's session. So, but we're glad you're here in person because you'll be able to ask any questions you have. So Robinson, I believe that's all I have. Are you ready?
Yes, Victoria, thank you so much for your introduction. Let me introduce myself too. Hello, everybody. My name is Robinson Vasquez. I work in the American Road and Transportation Builders Association as a manager, coordinator of all our training programs in the U.S. We work with grants from the Federal Highway Administration to provide this training. We also work with the OSHA Hardwood grant. And the idea is to disseminate all this great information to help our workers to be safe in the transportation construction industry. So we are going to talk a little more about fall protection in this presentation. Something about me: I am originally from Peru. I came some years ago to the US. I am an attorney there in Peru. I came here to do a master in law and then continue doing a master in business administration. I focus very much in labor law during my career, and I am convinced that investing in preventing an accident is a great investment for any company, as in some cases we were doing some studies while I was doing my MBA. I focus very much on safety and productivity, the impact of safety on productivity. And there is a big correlation between investing on safety and become a first-class company, not only in profits, but also in morale, communication, quality, productivity, return of investment. So there is a big correlation about it, not only for the human perspective that we are keeping our people safe, but also from the business perspective. Investing in preventing an accident is a great business. So of course I provide the training in Spanish. Around 25% of our workers in construction in general in the US are Hispanics, and it's important to reach all our people in different languages, so the language that they use. Just in case, as I told you, we are providing this training thank you to the Federal Highway Administration grant, and it is free. So if you want to contact me, if you want to organize similar training, you can send me an email. Maybe Paula can share with you this information later, or me, I can introduce in the presentation. But you can send me an email asking me about how can you organize this training for your workers, and I can send you all the information. It's basically you provide the platform and the students, and I provide, or ARTBA provides training and all the materials as we are doing here. So let me come back to our presentation. So we are going to talk about fall protection in this case. Okay, fall protection you know, in general construction, falls are the main cause of incidents in general construction, incidents, fatalities. But in the roadway construction industry, the main cause of incidents is basically traffic, okay, runovers and backovers by motorists or by our own equipment. But falls in the roadway construction industry is the second most frequent cause of fatalities. We were talking a little about our grants. We are working with the Federal Highway Administration today. Thank you to them for giving us the resources to provide this training. This is a classroom safety briefing when we provided it in person, face to face. But basically, some ideas here is it's important for us to be present during the class. We are going to have some questions during the class just to be sure that you are here, because we need to demonstrate our grantors that we are reaching you during these classes. There is going to be some evaluations about this training and also a post-test about this training. So please complete all this information. Some learning objectives that we have today for this presentation: explain your rights under OSHA and ways to contact the agency. So this training has a component from OSHA, and they are asking us to focus a little more about the rights, the whistleblower rights, okay, how to make a complaint, and how OSHA is protecting workers to use their rights to be safe while they are working. We are going to talk a little about it, okay? Then we are going to learn the most common causes of falls in roadway construction, especially falling at the same level, falling from equipments, and then falling from high altitudes, okay? We are going to study a little more about the five main points to prevent falls during transportation construction. We are learning the main methods we can use to protect ourselves against falling from high levels, especially high levels, because it is the main cause of fatalities, falling from high altitudes. Okay, so we are going to start with this little section about OSHA, workers' rights, retaliation, and complaints. So just this training is in general not only for foreman or supervisors or engineers, but also for workers. So OSHA is asking us to help them to be confident to use the OSHA resources. And it is something interesting for us also, for employers also, because as I told you, there is this big correlation between safety and productivity. So when a worker is helping us to identify a hazard and prevent an incident, actually that person is helping the company to be more profitable, because an accident can cost us employers, we are talking about maybe $300,000 on average. I was in Florida last year, and we were talking about an accident in the I-95, just because there was an accident. It was a runover accident, a backover accident. A dump truck was backing up and killed a guy. So OSHA stopped all the work in that area for around 4 days, and they calculate that only because they stopped working, the costs were $5 or $4 million. Yeah. I was talking the other day with one guy, was one of the victims of an backover by a dump truck. His leg was broken in 3 parts, and he told me just the medical costs were $250,000. Okay, $250,000. It's impressive. Not only from the personal or family perspective, the suffering of the worker, but also the companies are going to suffer, not only because of the incident, but also after the incident happens and you invest in recovering and cleaning whatever what's happening, retraining your workers, that problem is going to jump to your office. So you are going to deal with OSHA, an OSHA investigation, a police investigation, an insurance investigation, maybe some fines from OSHA, and you are going to need to hire an attorney to deal with all these problems, and all the process is going to last maybe 3 years, 4 years, and it is a lot of money that you are spending during the process. Then when you try to get a new contract, participate in a bid or a tender, usually the owners are going to ask you to show you your employment modification rate, your insurance rate, or EMR. And if you don't have a good rate, maybe you're going to lose opportunities to get a new job, a new activity, and your employees are going to lose their jobs too. So that's why it's important to empower our workers to help us to improve safety. Okay, that's important to have sometimes whistleblowers inside of the organization to help us to identify what are the problems and solve the problems before they become an accident. So some rights that the workers have, it's a safe and helpful workplace is the main idea of the general duty clause of OSHA. The employer has the obligation to provide a safe place for workers where to work without any hazard or recognized hazard. So that's the general idea. In OSHA 1926, you have all the rules, all the standards, but at the end, the obligation of the employer is to provide a good place for the workers where to do their jobs, okay, free from recognized hazards. Also, workers need to know about hazardous chemicals. It's very, very important to provide this information to prevent accidents, incidents with chemicals, to learn how to deal with chemicals in general. Information about injuries and illnesses. They need to have access to this information. Request correction from your employer. Yeah, it's important. Look, if we empower our workers to disclose any safety issue inside the company, they would not need to go to OSHA. Okay, they can go to OSHA whenever they want; it's their right. But sometimes it's more efficient to solve the problems immediately inside of the organization, the company, instead of going to OSHA. OSHA is going to take maybe a month to visit you, and so depending on the circumstances. And sometimes we need to empower our workers to, if they don't find an answer with the foreman, maybe they can appellate to another level inside of the company, maybe the director of safety or safety manager, or somebody else with more information. I was providing training in Texas a couple of years ago, and I was impressed about there was a sort of turmoil in the students, because they say, yes, you know, we usually complain, we talk with your foreman, and the foreman never tells our supervisors or the company about our problems that we have. And the safety manager in that moment took his business card and gave his business card to everybody, asking them, hey, if you don't find answers directly with our foremen, you can contact me directly. I need to hear you, because his job is preventing accidents, incidents, and that's the way in which we can save more money and be profitable too. So just it's important to empower our workers to disclose any safety issue inside the company, okay, and try to find the solutions inside. They have rights, or workers have the right to receive some training, of course. OSHA has been requesting us to have plans, and also inside of the plans or programs to have a training component in each about each hazard that we have to deal with. And then they have the right to examine exposure and medical records. So just to find out sometimes a pattern, you know, 5 years ago, this same incident happened to this guy. 3 years ago, it happened the same. 2 years ago, it happened the same. And now it happened to me. It happens to me. So I need the attorneys, the lawyers usually need to get this information to prepare a case sometimes against the company. So file an OSHA complaint. Okay, we are going to talk a little more about how to make an OSHA complaint and participate in an OSHA inspection. So at any time, the idea is if we have an OSHA inspector, and the site workers has the right to designate a representative before the OSHA inspector to go with the inspector during all the inspection, or any worker has the right to talk in private with the OSHA inspector, okay? And it's possible to have retaliation from the company. In some cases, the company say, aha, you are the troublemaker, we don't want to work with you, and you're going to be fired, or there is going to be a sort of another kind of retaliation. So the idea is to protect the worker, or OSHA wants to protect the worker against this kind of retaliation, and we need to learn a little more about it. Okay, for example, protection from retaliation. Sometimes there is sort of retaliation like firing, demoting, denying benefits, intimidation, reducing hours, reducing pay, threatening, blacklisting. So workers have 30 days from when the employee is notified or becomes aware of the retaliatory action to file a whistleblower complaint with OSHA. So that's a sort of a defense mechanism that we need to share with our workers, just to empower them to allow them that they are protected. Okay, as I told you, it's a good investment to encourage our workers to disclose any safety issue inside of the organization. But if in some extreme cases, of course, they can go to OSHA and request an inspection, for example. So we are going to watch here a short video from OSHA about the rights of the workers to protect the whistleblower and to request an OSHA inspection too.
Every worker has the right to speak up about dangers in the workplace. If you believe your workplace is unsafe, you have the right to file a complaint. It is illegal for your employer to punish you for exercising this right. Complaints from workers or their representatives are taken seriously by OSHA. Your name will not be given to your employer. It's easy and confidential. Call 800-321-6742 or visit osha.gov/complaint.
So this is a little about OSHA and how can we allow our workers to reach OSHA if they have any request, especially to make an inspections or to talk with the inspector and so on. So, but it is important to provide this information, but also empower our workers to disclose it internally with our foreman, with our safety manager, safety director, to the company, to find a solution inside of the company, because that solution could be faster and more effective, much more effective than requesting to have an OSHA inspector. Okay. So we are going to talk about fraud protection now. Let's analyze this video. How can we prevent this incident? Okay, so we're going to watch a video. There's going to be an incident, and please think by yourself what was wrong in this video and how can we prevent this incident. Let's do it again. Focus on this guy. Apparently he's taking some blueprints with him while he was using the ladder. And again, let's analyze it, this case. Okay, So what is wrong with this situation? Some people can say, you know, he's using a ladder. He should have 3 points of contact there, at least 3 points of contact. At least one hand should be on the rails all the time, and so on. Okay, we can talk a little about ladder protection. Then we have another problem here with this. It looks as a sort of a bridge or a scaffold. In any case, we have some rules about the rails, the top rails. There should be a middle rail and also a board at the bottom of this bridge or scaffold. So in a way in which these rails can prevent him from falling. Then we can analyze another situation. He can fall on this on this structure, so he could be impaled by this structure or cut by this structure. So there is another rule in the OSHA 1926 that tell us about if there is any risk of impalement from a worker, there should be a fall protection system at any altitude. So it's usually mandatory to have a fall protection system if you are 6 feet high or more, but the request to have a fall protection system could be reduced to every time you or a worker has the risk to be impaled or fall in a moving parts of a motor or equipment or something that can hurt the person, there should be a fall protection at any distance. It doesn't care about the 6 feet rule. So then this guy suffers the fall, and he is with his arms extended, and this is another problem. So apparently the workers are trying to help him, but in these cases, just remember, if you took your CPR first aid class, don't touch the victim, okay? Maybe you are creating or breaking some bones or creating additional problems. Just if you have some training about it, just try to stabilize his neck or her neck. Immediately, if you have an emergency action plan as it requested by OSHA, somebody has to call 911, somebody has to call the company, somebody has to go to the access zone of the work zone or the company, waiting for the ambulance to come and provide instruction directions where to go, where to arrive exactly, and so on. But don't touch the victim. It happens to my dad. In Peru, he was a welder, and he suffered a fall and almost broke his backbone. And to make it worse, people were trying to help him and trying to move him to another position, and according to the doctors, it was worse. So my father suffered this kind of incident. It was something that my family had to suffer a lot. I was very identified with this situation, so much that at the end I had the opportunity to study law, but here I am. So very focused on this area, just because of this incident that touched very much my family. So we are going to talk about how to prevent this kind of incidents, okay? But as you can realize, in general, in this graphic, falls are the main cause of incidents in the general construction. Okay, then you have a stroke by, cutting in between, electrocution. These are what we call the focus four, the four main causes of incidents in construction in general. Okay, that's why OSHA is very focused about this kind of incidents and how to prevent this kind of incidents. And then we have other kind of incidents like cave-ins, suffocation, and other kind of incidents. But falls are the main problem here. In roadway construction, as we studied it last week when we were talking about preventive runovers and backovers, traffic is the main cause of incidents for us. And falls are the second, the most frequent cause of fatalities in the roadway construction industry. but it is important. These numbers are real. Maybe it is not the first cause of incidents in the roadway construction because we work in a horizontal construction setting. So we don't go to high altitudes except when we are working with bridges and similar circumstances. But it is causing a lot of incidents, and we need to protect our workers against these kind of incidents. Okay. So especially when we are working in high altitudes, according to some statistics we have here from 2017, 22% of the workers fall from high altitude 30 feet height or more. But you can read this graphic, okay? People falling from high altitudes in general more than 6 feet height, they is the biggest cause of incidents falling from high altitude in general. You can get the numbers. Fatal fall cases, we have several cases. We have a lot of videos in YouTube. OSHA has several videos about fall protection, so we can analyze these cases. But it is frequent, and it happens to us in the roadway construction industry. So we have to be protected to prevent these situations. Okay. So we are going to analyze a general industry fall situation, and the idea here again is to identify what are the hazards and how can we prevent it. By the way, OSHA now and this year is very focused about hazard identification. Hazard identification should be the first step that we take in any circumstances related with safety. Okay, hazard analysis, hazard detection, hazard identification. It has or risk analysis. It has several names, but the idea is to go to the place in which we are going to do a job and analyze all the hazards that we can find there. Okay, it should be the first step in any safety program to do the hazard analysis. And in the past, we usually ask our engineers, supervisors, foremen to do the hazard analysis, but now OSHA is asking us to teach workers in general also about hazard analysis, because they have to know what are the risks and how to identify where are the hazards and take decisions about it. Just the other day I was providing a training to a landscaping company, and they gave me a very interesting case in which they were asked to cut some bamboo trees, but these bamboo trees were in contact with some power lines, and the workers decided not to do it because they received the right training, the right preparation, and they were empowered to take decisions. And effectively, these bamboo trees were conducting electricity to the ground. So, and they have to energize the area before start working. Call the electric company to energize this area and start working. But it was a very good example that training our workers about to do hazard analysis can save their life and keep them safe and prevent fatalities, of course. So let's go to this video and think about what is wrong and how can we prevent this incident.
In the U.S., more than 800 construction workers die every year while on the job. Falls are the #1 cause of fatalities in construction. Falls cause 1 of every 3 construction worker deaths. These falls happen in a split second while workers are on roofs, scaffolds, ladders, bridges, and other work surfaces. But these deaths can be prevented. The video you're about to see shows how quickly falls at construction sites can lead to workers' deaths. The video will also show what employers must do so that the work can be done more safely. Employers have a responsibility to provide a safe workplace and require protective equipment. You'll see that using the right type of fall protection saves lives. Please be advised, the scenes you're about to see deal with deaths at construction sites and might be disturbing for some people. All scenes are based on true stories. A worker was installing vinyl siding on a 2-story townhome. He was standing on a ladder that was placed on top of a scaffold. A coworker was on the scaffold cutting pieces of siding. The scaffold had no guardrails. The workers were not wearing any fall protection. While standing on the top step of the ladder, the worker putting up siding overreached to one side and the ladder overturned. He fell nearly 20 feet and landed on the driveway below. He died later that day from injuries caused by the fall. Let's look at the events leading up to this tragic incident and see how it could have been prevented. Originally, the worker installing siding was standing on a ladder that was placed on top of a scaffold. This is a very serious and dangerous OSHA violation. Also, there was no fall protection for these workers. OSHA requires employers to provide workers with fall protection when they're working on scaffolds more than 10 feet above a lower level. Let's look again at the worker installing siding. But now, the worker is standing on a fully decked pump jack scaffold. It has guardrails at the top, middle, and ends. So instead of being at risk from falling while installing siding, this worker is now protected from fall hazards. This example shows the importance of employers following OSHA's fall protection standards to ensure that workers are provided with a safe workplace. These types of construction deaths are preventable. The fall protection measures shown here save workers' lives. Use fall protection on the job. It could be the difference between life and death. If you would like more information, contact OSHA at www.osha.gov or 1-800-321-OSHA. That's 1-800-321-6742.
Let's take a look to this situation again. You can think about all the OSHA violation. By the way, it's a very serious violation here. It should be around, it could be around $135,000 per violation per person on risk in this case. As they are working, in any case, you are working with a scaffold 10 feet or higher, you need a sort of fall protection system, maybe guardrails, maybe personal fall arrest systems to protect the worker from falling. Then, according to the scaffold regulations, standards, you cannot use anything to rise yourself from the surface of the scaffold. In this case, they are using a step ladder, which is critical. Okay, and also we go to the rules about the step ladders. You cannot use the last two steps in a step ladder. In this case, he or this person is using the last step. It's incredible, this situation, and we have the results. So also let's empower our workers to disclose the situation. Look, sometimes they have been doing very risky activities in the past, and they become comfortable with this situation, saying, hey, nothing happened to me in the past. But we have to teach them that it's about the statistics. Okay, maybe you are doing this activity and nothing happened in the past, but someday you are going to be distracted. Someday somebody else is going to be distracted, and you are going to have this incident. According to some statistics, for each 600 near misses, we have a fatality. So it's like playing with the, or going to play in a casino with a machine. You are going to introduce coins all the time, and you never win. But someday, according to the statistics, you are going to be a winner. It's the same here. You do the risky activity constantly, and nothing happens. But someday, you are going to have an incident. So we need to teach our workers to just follow the instruction. Of course, if there is an OSHA inspection, it's going to be very expensive for the company. But if there is a fatality, it's going to be expensive, very much expensive for the company, and of course for the victim and his family and co-workers, and the morale and productivity of the company, and so on. So it's better to invest in preventing incidents than having a solution from an incident. So in general, to prevent fall incidents, we recommend these steps. Okay, doing a hazard analysis before doing any job. You send somebody to the workplace, an expert, especially an engineer, a safety engineer, a supervisor, a foreman, somebody with some experience, to do the hazard analysis, and they can say, for example, hey, we have some power lines here, we are going to do some trenches here, so we have some risk of cave-ins. Then we are going to deal with some utilities, and underburied utilities. We need to be cautious about the situation. Then we are going maybe to have confined spaces. Maybe we are going to do this job in a street, on a street, so we are going to have traffic around. So do all the hazard analysis, okay? Then we need to create a plan. OSHA recommends us to do plans for several things, okay? And make it mandatory to have plans for fall protection. For example, it's mandatory not only to have a plan, but to have a program. We're going to talk a little more about the difference between a plan and a program. But the idea is, if it is not in the law, it is not requested on the law, but you have a hazard, you have also the obligation to create a plan. For example, internal traffic control plans. You go to the OSHA 1926, you go to the Federal Highway Administration, MUTCD, you go to all the regulations, and there is no any rule or a standard asking you to have an internal traffic control plan to control the traffic inside of the war zone. But as runovers and backovers are the main cause of incidents, the OSHA inspectors are requesting the company to have an internal traffic control plan to neutralize this hazard, which is the internal traffic we have in the war zone. So you need a plan, basically, and they are using, for example, the general duty clause, so the obligation of the employer to provide a safe place to work for the workers. So the best, to be safe, create a plan for any hazard, okay? Then you need to provide protection. Maybe you need to use the hierarchy of controls of OSHA that we have here. Where is here? Here it is. Hierarchy of control. We're going to talk a little more about it, but it should be in your plan and how are you going to provide protection for your workers. Okay, provide training and evaluate. So evaluate, go to the place, talk with the workers, verify that everything is okay, and also request suggestion for your workers, because they are working there and they can identify hazards that sometimes you cannot see from your office perspective. So it's important to get this information, evaluate this the plan is working or not, and then come back again to the plan, okay, and improve the plan. It's a constant process. OSHA is requesting us to evaluate our plans frequently. For example, now we have the silica protection plan, in which it's required to be revamped, the plan at least once a year. Okay, so it's a good principle. Now OSHA is requesting to do it for several things, to reevaluate your plan periodically. Okay, but this is the steps that we have to take to prevent fall protection, and we can apply it for almost every hazard. Okay, you do your hazard analysis, identify the hazards, create a plan for each hazard, provide protection using the hierarchy of controls, train your workers, and evaluate it, and begin again with a plan. Okay, so we have these hazards. Talking about falls in the roadway construction industry, we have these hazards: falls on the same level, fall from equipment, and fall from elevation. Okay, and we are going to talk about this hazard. Of course, most of the fatalities are happening from falls from elevation, but we have also people having incidents falling on the same level and falling from equipment. For example, as I told you about my father, he almost broke his back. He was just walking, and there was some oil on the ground, on the surface, and he had this incident just falling at the same level. So it is possible to have it. Okay. Other topics like falling from stairways and ladders are covered in a different presentation. So as the way in which OSHA organized all this information they focus very much on the fall protection area, but also they have special trainings for stairways and ladders. For example, when we provide the OSHA 10-hour training, fall protection is a topic, a mandatory topic, and you have to provide the training about fall protection, but there is another section to train your workers about stairways and ladders, and sometimes the scaffold is another area. But we are going to just focus on the general fall hazard, especially from high altitude, okay? Special training about the stairways and ladders are not fully provided in this presentation. These topics request a different, another training, another presentation. By the way, falling from ladders, according to the statistics, around 300 people die falling from ladders. Okay, it is a big issue from the OSHA perspective, the OSHA statistics. But as in the roadway construction industry, we don't use a lot of ladders. We are not going to cover this area very much. So hierarchy of controls, it's something that we need to memorize, okay, and we need to use constantly. You identify a hazard, then what are you going to do to neutralize the hazard? And these are the tools that you are going to use to neutralize a hazard. First, you need to think about how I'm going to eliminate the hazard completely. Okay, if it's possible to eliminate the hazard or not. Then maybe you are going to go to the substitution level. Okay, how can I use another product or service that is going to improve my safety or the safety for my workers? Okay, then you have engineer controls. How I'm going to design this workplace in a way in which I can reduce hazard for my workers. Then you have the administrative controls. Okay, how I'm going to organize my workers to prevent incidents. For example, maybe rotating workers instead of having one worker doing the job constantly all the time. We can rotate workers and ask and create some different turns for the workers to do the job. For example, doing flaggers sometimes need to be rotated to prevent incidents, and we are going to talk a little more about it. Then the last level of protection is providing the personal protective equipment. Okay, personal protective equipment. Sometimes people automatically identifies it with safety, but as you can realize, that's the less effective method to prevent incidents. It's required, it's mandatory, but it is much better to think about how can I eliminate the hazard, how can I substitute these products or service for others that are going to improve my safety. How can I design the work zone in a better way to prevent incidents? How can I provide training or rotate my workers or create other administrative controls to my workers to prevent hazard? And then personal protective equipment. So some examples about elimination of the hazard. For example, some years ago, a company in Utah was building a bridge, but they created a new method to build a bridge. They decided to build the bridge on the ground level. Okay, in that way, they eliminated the risk of fall hazard from high altitude. And they just use a couple of cranes at the end of the activity, the job, when the bridge was finished on the ground level, and they moved these cranes moved the bridge to the final position. They just stopped the traffic a couple of hours, and they did it just using new technologies. So in this way, they eliminated the fall hazards. Substitution. Sometimes you have some chemicals that people know, or the scientists know, that they produce cancer, and you decide to use another chemical that, according to the scientists, it doesn't produce cancer. Or maybe you need to hire a company that is more specialized in some areas that you don't have the capabilities in your company to do. For example, sometimes when we are talking about traffic management, temporary traffic control plans, there are special companies that are focused on temporary traffic control plan, and these capabilities are very useful instead of trying to do it by yourself. Okay, you find somebody else to do the job for you, or trying to find a product that is much more efficient or create more safety than the product that you have. Sometimes we have, for example, when we are doing some jackhammer, using a jackhammer, there are new jackhammers that can provide some spray, water spraying on the point of contact in a way in which we prevent the silica dust to airborne, and in that way we can protect our workers instead of using or having another worker spraying the area with water to prevent this airborne silica to the workers. Okay, so it's an investment, but it is going to help you to be more efficient and to prevent incidents or contamination. Engineered controls, for example, every time you create a work zone, you have to design it in a way in which you can prevent runovers and backovers, for example. Okay, but it is important how do you design the work zone to prevent hazards. Administrative control, we were talking about it before. For example, in the case of flaggers, rotation of the flagger is important. You have only one flagger, he is certified to be a flagger, but being a flagger is a very hard job. It's very difficult. You know, they get bored. They think, what I'm doing here, I need to find a job, because sometimes the weather is so hot, the temperature is so high that they are tired and they become distracted. And if you have a flagger who is distracted, it's possible to have an incident. So a solution to this is to have several flaggers and create different shifts or turns for them to do the job. Hey, Mike, you are going to work from 8 to 10. Robert, you're going to work from 10 to noon, and so on. Rotate your workers, because a flagger needs to be alert and react very fast if there is any hazard with the traffic. And then provide a personal protective equipment, okay? And teach them how to use the personal protective equipment. You know, sometimes people say, yes, but it is common sense. Common sense, just, it's funny sometimes, as we have this COVID-19 situation, people, it's in some cases it's mandatory to use a mask, but they don't use a mask to cover their mouth or nose. They use a mask just to cover their eyes, like if people were superheroes, and they say, yes, I'm in complaint with the OSHA or the CDC or the state requirements, and they are not. So sometimes how to use the PPE, it's mandatory to have a training about how to use it properly, how to identify what PPE is efficient for the job or activity you are doing or not. Okay, so it requires some training. But the idea here is to know what methods are we going to use to prevent incidents, to neutralize the hazards. Okay. So let's talk about the first case, faults on the same level. Okay, it's possible to have faults on the same level, of course, and it's possible to have fatalities on the same level. Sometimes in the left picture, in the picture of the left, we can see it's a manhole without any kind of protection. Okay, there is no plank covering this area with a hole sign on the top of the plank. There is not any barricade, no guardrails, no warning signs. So a distracted person just walking in this area could fall inside of this manhole. So it's an OSHA violation. Then we have in the right side people working. It's possible we have several possibilities here. A worker on the vehicle can fall. We have some guardrails to the right, to the left, but at any time it's possible to have falls from the same level, and we have to be aware of this situation. Okay, especially falling from the same level happens tripping over materials or debris. It's required housekeeping. Falling on hills or embankments, stepping in holes and walking on irregular ground, stumbling while carrying loads that blocks vision, slips or trips in muddy, wet, and or icy conditions in proper footwear. How can we neutralize these hazards? We have some 6 basic best practices. Use footwear with ankle support and soles that grip. That's why it's mandatory to use special boots in the work zone. Of course, OSHA is not requiring employers to pay for the boots, but the employee have to buy boots that are adequate for the job that they're going to do. Toe protection, good ankle support, and soles that grip. Okay. Avoid walking on muddy, wet, or icy surfaces. So it's something that is common sense, but as I told you, common sense is not common. We need to repeat it constantly to our workers. Don't carry heavy loads. Use hauling equipment. Yeah, it's not only a problem of a lack of vision because you are carrying a heavy loads and it's obstructing your vision. It's also an ergonomic problem. If you can use a car or get some help from somebody else to do the job, do it. But your vision is important, okay, to see where you are going. It happens also from spotters. Spotters usually are backing up while they are spotting a dump truck, but sometimes they are not watching what's behind them. So the spotter can fall, and what is worse is the vehicle can continue backing up and run over or back over the worker. So it's important to control our vision when we are working. Okay. Then fill in, cover, and mark or barricade holes in grounds, as we were watching in the previous picture. We need to prevent people from falling in these holes, manholes, sewer, and other situations in which, on the same level, people can fall inside of these structures. Practice good housekeeping, and housekeeping is not only important for safety, but it's a good indication about the safety culture in a company. Talking with the OSHA inspectors, they usually tell me there is a big correlation between housekeeping and safety level of the company. If there is a good housekeeping, they are very sure that there is a very good safety level in the company. But if there is a lack of maintenance, bad housekeeping, they are very sure that the safety level in the company is very low. So then they are going to do a very meticulous inspection in these cases. So housekeeping is, according to them, is a great indicator about the safety level of a company. Include walking rules in the internal traffic control plan. Well, we are very, very much concerned about traffic, roadway construction, and we are emphasize companies to have an internal traffic control plan to separate workers on foot from heavy equipment and create special routes or paths for workers different from the paths for traffic. Okay, the main idea of an internal traffic control plan is to separate workers on foot from heavy equipment as much as possible and prevent unnecessary interactions. So if you create a special walking routes for workers, they should follow them and fulfill with the instruction of the internal traffic control plan. Then we have another cause of falls from equipment. Okay, when we are working with heavy equipments, we have to go up and down from the equipment constantly, and we could have accidents and incidents from them if we are not using, inclusive of an operator not using the safety belt, they could fall easily from their equipment. So some recommendations, well, some of the incidents that we can have from falling from equipment, not because workers are not facing ladders, equipment when going up or down, not using grabs, rails when going up or down, step ladders not clear and defect free, platform not provided or not properly guarded, especially when you are retrieving or putting temporary traffic control devices like cones and barrels. Seat belts, restraint not used. So these are the main situations in which we can have people falling from equipment. In some cases, we provide a ride to a person in an heavy equipment in which we don't have any seat or seat belt for this passenger. So OSHA is requiring us to provide a seat and a seat belt, safety belt for any passenger in a vehicle. If we don't have it, we cannot provide a ride to anybody else, okay? So in this case, for example, in this picture there, apparently this guy is only has 2 points of contact, okay? And also he's also distracted with the cell phone. So it is possible to have a fall, and having a fall from 2 or 3 feet height really can create some problems. People broke his legs or his arms when they are falling from this altitude, because gravity creates accelerations, and the impact is going to be higher, or weight when we accelerate is going to be higher, and our bones are not made to resist this impact if we are not aware about this situation. Sometimes you can fall, you can jump from 3 or 4 feet height, but you are ready to do it. But when we have an incident, we don't select how are we going to arrive. Sometimes people or heads are impact the ground level before any other part of our body, so we don't control how are we going to fall. Let's watch this video. It's an incident caused by somebody giving a ride to a co-worker.
A 20-year-old road construction company flagger was crushed to death when he fell from and was subsequently run over by an asphalt roller. The victim had been employed by the company for 3 days. He was performing duties as a flagger on a highway resurfacing project. The asphalt roller operator was driving the roller up an incline and attempted to shift into a higher gear while he was moving forward. The roller did not shift to the higher gear and became stuck in neutral. The roller then began moving backwards down the incline, and the operator was unable to stop it with the foot brake. No attempt was made to apply the emergency brake. As the roller was going downhill and gaining speed, the operator saw cars approaching on the road. To avoid the possibility of hitting the cars, he decided to turn the roller into the ditch. He informed the flagman, who was riding on the roller, of his intentions and told him to jump clear of the roller when he drove off the pavement. A witness said it appeared the victim was thrown from the roller when it left the pavement. When the roller left the pavement, it rolled backward into a culvert at an opposite incline and then rolled forward. When it rolled forward, the roller drum rolled over and came to rest on the flagman's head. A witness to the incident immediately responded and directed the roller operator to reverse the roller off the victim. The injuries were too severe for any first aid to be rendered. The victim died at the incident site. The following lessons learned are recommendations from the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. In order to avoid similar fatalities, management should consider the following. Establish a hands-on training program to ensure everyone operating the machinery understands all safety issues and precautions. Create and enforce a thorough vehicle maintenance and inspection program. If the vehicle shows any signs of disrepair, discontinue use until proper maintenance is performed. Develop and implement a comprehensive hazard recognition program. In addition, workers should remember, never ride on a vehicle in any spot other than the driver's seat or designated passenger location. Never get on or off a vehicle while it is in motion.
So how can we prevent fall of equipment? Follow 5 basic best practices. Use handrails. Always use 3 points of contact, similar to a ladder rule. In general, 3 points of contact. One of these point of contact should be one of our arms all the time. Make sure steps and ladders are clear and defect-free. Do not ride on equipment except in provided seats. Use seat belt or restraints for riding in cars, trucks, personal carriers. So these are some recommendations. But in this video also, let's emphasize something, okay? The mechanics of the vehicle was not working well. The operator was trying to change the gear and he didn't know how to do it, okay? Emphasize that with our operators that review the mechanics of the vehicle, the brakes should be in good condition, the motor should be in good condition. So emphasize it. If it's not working properly, it's possible to have an incident. Also, train our operator. In this case, apparently the operator didn't use the emergency brake, okay, to stop the vehicle. He didn't know how to use it apparently. So it's recommended to emphasize it, provide training to our workers about the manual of the vehicle and how to try to operate some vehicles. In the case, of course, it's required in some states to be certified to operate some specific vehicles. Also, in general, provide that instruction to our workers. Hey, never ride on a vehicle if you don't have a seat and a safety belt for your seat, okay? It is required by OSHA to prevent this kind of incidents. So don't give a ride to anybody, at least you have a seat and a seat belt for the person. So 3 points of contact, at least one hand in contact all the time, facing the equipment all the time. This is important. It's more frequent to have incidents when people are leaving the vehicle. Why? Because when you have access to the vehicle, you are usually using the handrails and in front of the ladder to go up to the vehicle. But when some workers, operators are leaving the vehicle, they decide not to face or not to use the rails, but use just gravity to leave the vehicle, jumping or putting the back to the ladder. And we have more accidents when people are falling because they are not following the rules, especially when they are leaving the vehicles. And all the time, we need people to have the 3 points of contact with the ladder or structure of the vehicle, at least one hand in contact all the time with the handrails, and facing the equipment all the time when you are going up or down of the vehicle, okay? So points of contact, at least 3 points of contact. So then we have this third case of fall from elevation, but we are going to have a short break now. So Victoria, if you are with me, I think you have questions for our students, and after finishing these questions, we can have a 5 minutes break maybe and continue after this break. So
actually, there's no questions right now in the question box. They must be saving them all up for the end. But if you'd like, I can go ahead and run the poll.
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and it's the one about the second most frequent cause of deaths in roadway construction, correct?
Okay, yep.
All right. So if you have the poll open on your screen and you can't get your answer to record for some reason, it's because you're in full screen mode and you just need to hit the escape key in order to answer the question. So we are shooting for at least 80% of you to answer this question. And we are not recording how you answer. So just go ahead and go with your gut instinct and get your vote in. And while you're doing your voting there, I will mention for those of you who might have joined late that we will be sending out a follow-up email with hopefully a link to the recording if the technology works correctly, and also copies of, or excuse me, links to the 2 documents that are in the handout panel. So if for some reason your handouts aren't downloading properly from here in the GoToWebinar panel, you'll be able to get those via the link that I'll send out in the email. All right, well, we're up over 80%, so I'm going to close the poll and share the results. And for our results, we have 76% Robinson who voted for falls.
Good.
And then we've got a follow-up for 14% caught in between. And then we've got 5% traffic, and electrocutions and cave-ins are tied at 3%. So it looks like everybody was paying attention. That's great.
Yeah. Yes, the main cause of fatalities in roadway construction is traffic, motorist intrusion, or own runovers and backovers by our own equipment. But in roadway construction, the second most frequent cause of fatalities, which is the question, is falls. Okay, so yeah.
Okay, well, that's all I've got on the poll question. So back to you, Robinson.
Okay, let's continue. Well, let's take a 5 minutes break and continue at 11:10. So you can stretch, you can go to the restroom for a while, and let's continue at 11:10. Okay. Thank you, Victoria.
The Robinson, while we're waiting for the break to end here, I have to know, do people just email you these pictures?
Excuse me?
Like the picture you're showing on the screen, do people just email you these pictures? Because I can't imagine like wanting to climb outside the window in a large building and being held on by a rope. That's just,
I have several of these videos. Sometimes I'm providing some training and people at the end of the presentation show me their cell phones, and I ask them, hey, give it to me, please, send it to me.
oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's so common sense is not common. It's incredible.
Yeah. Well, the break's over, so I'll let you go back to it. Thanks.
Okay. Let's continue with our topic now. We were talking about the third case, fall from elevations. This is the most frequent case of fatalities or cause of fatalities. We are working in roadway construction, usually in a horizontal level, but sometimes we need to work from bridges, formwork, scaffolds, aerial lifts, excavation rims. So we need to be aware about this problem because it's happening to us too, not only traffic, but also falls. Some activities that in which we can have falls, of course, installing signs, renovation and demolition, decking operation. And talking about decking operation, we have an OSHA video about this topic in which we are going to use this video to start talking about it. Let's do the hazard identification and how can we prevent this incident to happen. Okay, falls in construction, bridge decking from OSHA.
In the U.S., more than 800 construction workers die every year while on the job. Falls are the #1 cause of fatalities in construction. Falls cause 1 of every 3 construction worker deaths. These falls happen in a split second while workers are on roofs, scaffolds, ladders, bridges, and other work surfaces. But these deaths can be prevented. The video you're about to see shows how quickly falls at construction sites can lead to workers' deaths. The video will also show what employers must do so that the work can be done more safely. Employers have a responsibility to provide a safe workplace and required protective equipment. You'll see that using the right type of fall protection saves lives. Please be advised, the scenes you're about to see deal with deaths at construction sites and might be disturbing for some people. All scenes are based on true stories. 2 workers were installing deck bands onto a bridge. They were not wearing any personal fall protection, and there was no safety net below the bridge. One of the workers was preparing to weld the next deck band into place. While walking toward a deck band that needed to be secured, the worker tripped and fell onto an unsecured deck band. The deck band slid away from her, creating an opening. She fell for 75 feet, landing on the ground below. She died instantly from her injuries. Let's look at the events leading up to this tragic incident and see how it could have been prevented. The workers had no fall protection, which OSHA requires the employer provide when working at heights of 15 feet and above. Let's see what happens when these workers use fall protection. Now there is a temporary horizontal lifeline attached along the beams. Each worker wears a full-body harness and connects to the lifeline using a self-retractable lanyard with self-rescue capability. The horizontal lifeline system can use 2 or more anchors connected to one of the concrete beams. Once attached to the beam, a cable is run between the anchors and the lanyard is connected to the cable. As before, while walking toward a deck band that needed to be secured, the worker tripped and fell onto an unsecured deck band. The horizontal lifeline stops her from falling to the ground. The worker is lowered slowly to the ground. Another way to protect these workers is to use a safety net. So now, when the worker trips and falls onto the unsecured deck band, the net stops her from falling to the ground. This example shows the importance of employers following OSHA's fall protection standards to ensure that workers are provided with a safe workplace. These types of construction deaths are preventable. The fall protection measures shown here Save workers' lives. Use fall protection on the job. Could be the difference between life and death. If you would like more information, contact OSHA at www.osha.gov or 1-800-321-OSHA. That's 1-800-321-6742.
So just in case, all these videos from OSHA are available for free. You can visit the OSHA webpage and get a good library of videos that you can share with your workers to provide some toolbox talks, safety talks, or training. Okay. So fall from elevations. Fall from elevation is an interesting topic because it's a little complex. OSHA 1926 has several rules, different rules, according to your altitude and the activity you are doing while you are working in high altitude. The basic rule is the 6 feet rule, okay, in which in general OSHA is requiring everybody to have a fall protection system, maybe a guardrail, maybe a net, maybe a personal fall arrest system, maybe a personal fall restraint system, if you are working 6 feet high or more. But if you are working on a scaffold, you are required to use a sort of a protection, fall protection system if you are working 10 feet high or more on a scaffold. I was asking this expert about it. Why is this difference? Why, if people can fall from 10 feet to 6 feet or from 6 feet to the ground is the same result? But I couldn't find any good answer about it. But it's a different. If people are working on a scaffold, fall protection is mandatory if they are 10 feet high or more. Then we have another rule, the 15 feet high rule that is applied to people working on steel erection. Okay, in these circumstances, we are talking about basically you are using your body harness. The workers are using a body harness, and they have a couple of D-rings in the front area in which they can use a chain to attach the body harness to the steel erection structure. But when you are 15 feet high or more, in addition to this system, you need to attach your D-ring in your back to a lanyard or retractile system to prevent you from falling for 15 height or more. But it is another rule. Then there is another rule if you're working above water. There is another rule if you are working and you have a risk to be impaled by some structure when you are falling and so on. We are going to talk a little more about all these things. But in general, for prevention, we can repeat what we learned before. It's specific for the fall protection hazard from high altitude, but we have them again here. 5 basic practices. First, do a hazard evaluation. Okay, before starting any job, do a hazard evaluation and find your hazard. Of course, one of them is going to be falls. Then plan for 100% fall protection. Okay, it is required to develop a written fall protection plan written by a qualified person. It's interesting. It's required as a sort of engineer, not a competent person, not a foreman, but a qualified person. Sometimes some people with some experience, proven experience, working in this area during several years, or having a title, a professional title that can back his knowledge or her knowledge. Okay, but it is important to have a plan. Provide and use proper fall protection system. So as we were talking about it, you can provide, for example, guardrails. There are some specific rules about how to install or the dimensions of the rails. You can provide the personal fall arrest system, all the body harness, connectors, anchor point, and all this personal protective equipment. You can provide warning signs sometimes 6 feet distant from the edge of the fall hazard in a way in which people can avoid to be near the edge, but it should be a warning sign just no less than 6 feet distance from the hazard. And you can provide a net. So there are different ways in which you can protect your workers, okay? But you have to decide what method are we going to use. Train your workers in fall protection, especially how to use the personal protective equipment. There are some rules that they need to be aware of, the process and how to identify if there is any defect on the body harness or the personal fall arrest systems. It's also required to enforce and evaluate the fall protection program periodically, okay? And with this information, improve your plan, okay? So, for example, there is here a recommendation: use modular erection to avoid work at heights on forms. It is something interesting. As I told you before, if you can build something on the ground level and then use a crane to put it in the final position, you can reduce the fall hazard by elimination. So you eliminate a lot of circumstances in which people can fall from high altitude if you build something using the modular system on the ground level and then use a crane to take it to the final position. In the previous videos, just in case they were talking about the 15 feet rule, they say it's mandatory to OSHA requiring to use a fall protection system if you are 15 feet height or more. They are just using the steel erection rule, okay? There is a discussion about it. They should be maybe referring the 6 feet rule, as they were working horizontally, not vertically, but it is the way it is in the video. So we have here a picture about the modular erection. They are using some cranes to move the bridge to its final position. So you cannot see any worker on the bridge in a high altitude because they were building also this bridge on the ground level, so they reduce or eliminate the fall hazard from high altitude especially. Some basics about fall protection: falls from elevations are falls from levels that are 6 feet or more above a lower level. This is the basic rule. Look, there are companies in which they created a 4 feet rule, okay? Anytime a worker is 4 feet high or more, they need to use a fall protection system. Maybe a guardrail, maybe a body harness, and so on. So some states like Washington State, for example, they don't have the 6 feet rule. They have the 4 feet rule. Okay, so it is creating another level of protection, improving the protection for the workers in general. But in federal OSHA, we have this 6 feet rule. If your company decides to create another rule to improve the protection for your workers, you can do it, of course. For work 6 feet or more above a lower level, OSHA requires fall protection. Exception to this requirement includes scaffold and steel erection activities, as we were talking before. Okay, workers exposed to falls from elevations must be covered by a fall protection program developed by a qualified person. Okay, now we have this concept. We were talking before about having a fall protection plan, okay? But now they are talking about having a fall protection program. What is the difference between a plan and a program? To make it easy, we can make a comparison. For example, you have a cookbook. You have several recipes inside to prepare different meals. So we can say that the cookbook is the program, and the specific recipes you have inside are the plans. So a sort of fall program is a collection of plans in which also we provide the vision, the safety vision of the company. We can include the emergency action plans and all the tools that we are required to make more effective the individual plans. So in this case, it happens that it's important to have a fall protection plan program, excuse me, because there are different circumstances. In fall protection, we have several rules, several circumstances in which we are working, and it's important to know about all these different plans to tackle every hazard and put them all together in a program. Okay, it is important that it should be written by a qualified person, somebody with a proven knowledge and experience to do the job. Not anybody can just write a fall protection program. So we have some OSHA standards, and that's why it's important to have a program, because we have different standards that we were talking before, and we need to create a sort of plan for each rule, because we are talking about different situations and circumstances. In this table, we can find the specific rules or standards in the OSHA 1926 book. Okay, the first section, subpart E, they are talking about a personal flotation device. Okay, anytime a worker is working above water like lakes, river, and there is a risk of drawing the site, the employer needs to provide the person with a personal protective equipment, a flotation device, and also there should be a boat with all the equipment and personnel ready to rescue a worker who falls in the water. Okay, so it's a sort of requirement. So a special circumstance in which you are working above water and there is a risk for you to fall and thrown in the water, and there should be a boat ready to rescue the personnel. Okay, it could be a plan. We can create a plan about this situation. We have to create a plan about this situation, and this plan is going to be part of the program. Then we have this rule, the subpart L, about the scaffolds for protection requirements, and you can see here there is the 10-feet rule. Okay, you are working on a scaffold, it's mandatory to have fall protection system if you are working 10 feet high, and you have the standards here, because also OSHA is requiring us that people working with fall hazard, they should know about the rules. They should know about the standards. It's interesting, they don't require it in other hazards like, I don't know, caving protection or electrocution. They don't require that the training include the standards, but in this case, they are asking us to include the standards, specific standards for every situation. So now you have this table with the standards, okay? Then we have the subpart M with fall protection requirements in general. So we have all these 6-feet rules from different circumstances, and you are going to create a plan about all these different circumstances, okay? And you have the standards here too. Then we have these special circumstances. You are working in subpart Q, concrete and masonry requirements, when we have some rebars, for example. If people can fall and be impaled by a rebar, you need to provide for protection at any distance or 0 distance. They don't care about the distance you're falling. They just want to avoid you to be impaled or fall in any structure or rebars or machines or equipment with moving parts in which you can be triturated or impaled. Okay, and then we have this last level of protection. This subpart R about the steel erection. Okay, you are building a bridge, and you have this 15-feet rule. But basically, as I told you before, they are asking you to use a body harness with some D-rings in the front, in which you can attach a device, a chain that you are going to connect with the structure of the steel erection, steel structure, and be safe. But if you are working 15 feet high or more. In addition to these measures, to this fall protective measure, you need to use your D-ring in the back of the body harness and connect it with a lanyard or a retractile system to an anchor point strong enough to resist your weight. So as we can realize, we need a plan for all the circumstances in which we are working. We are talking about different situations, and if we compilate all these plans together, we can create a program, okay, and add some common information that we share with all the individual plans. Like, for example, what is the phone number of the firefighters nearest firefighters to the war zone, or the police office, or the office of the company. Who are we going to call if there is an emergency? Who is going to do what if there is an emergency, and so on. So it's important to know the OSHA standards. OSHA is asking us to talk about the OSHA standards, specifically for the fall protection situation. So management and the fall protection competent person must know the OSHA standards in detail. So all these standards, yes, managers, safety managers, supervisors, foremen should know about these standards, okay? Competent person, the definition of competent person means one who is capable of identifying existing and predictable hazards in the surroundings of or working conditions, and who has authorization to take prompt corrective measures to eliminate them, okay? This is an interesting concept because, look, in OSHA 1926, now the standard is requiring to have competent person for different activities, for hazards, confined space hazard, silica protection hazard, different activities. OSHA is required to have competent person, a competent person, okay? And what does it mean, a competent person? We usually think about the foreman as the competent person, but these are the requirements to be a competent person, okay? One who is capable of identifying existing and predictable hazards. Maybe we can train somebody, and the person receive all the information about how to identify existing and predictable hazard. Okay, this guy has the knowledge now in the surroundings or working conditions, okay, and who has authorization to take prompt corrective measures to eliminate them. And this is another thing, the authorization, to the power to ask people to stop working or do the job is usually reserved for the foreman. But we can create some rules. We can create some rules indicating, hey, in addition to the foreman, this person who has received all the training about fall hazards has the authority to ask the workers to stop working and provide corrective measures in addition to the foreman, okay? And this concept, we can apply this concept to all these other activities like traffic, for example, cave-ins, hazards, trenching excavation hazards, confined space hazards, electrocution hazards. Somebody who, in addition to the foreman, has the authority to take prompt corrective measures to eliminate the hazards. So it's important because sometimes people say, hey, it's enough to send somebody to have the training and this guy is a competent person about it. No, it's not a competent person until he has the authority to request workers to stop working or take corrective measures. If we don't provide this power, this authorization to the worker, he is not a competent person yet. It's not enough to have the training. So what does a competent person do? Oversee documented inspections where fall protection measures are used, okay? Train employees by a competent person qualified in the fall protection measures and program implemented by the company. Train employees concerning fall protection standards, emphasizing the recognition and avoidance of fall hazards. All employees exposed to fall hazards should be trained and in OSHA standard requirements. It's interesting. Again, We have the OSHA standard requirements. So how do we do all these activities? Because the OSHA inspectors have some directives about how to do the inspection. So as part of the inspection, it's interesting. They could ask workers, hey, worker, tell me, who is your competent person about fault hazards? And the workers need to know who is the competent person. They can say, of course, that my foreman is the competent person. Maybe he is the only one competent person. But if there is another competent person specialized on the fault hazard, they should know about it. Then the training can be provided by the competent person, or the competent person could invite somebody else to provide the training. But it's important to document all these trainings, okay, signing sheets, and also materials used during the training, who the resume maybe of the person providing the training, if somebody that we hired to do it. And we need to file all this information, because if we have an OSHA inspection, the OSHA inspector could ask us to show them the documentation about the training we provide to our workers about fault hazards. So it is something that we need to know, okay? Fault protection plan. A fault protection plan is a plan to control fault hazard written by a qualified person again. The steps in developing a plan include perform fault hazard analysis, again, the same concept. Select fault protection system, which require to use the pyramid of the hierarchy of controls. What system are we going to use? Elimination, substitution, engineer control, administrative control, and then PPE. Okay, it's only one of the solutions. Identify rescue equipment. Okay, OSHA is asking us to provide or rescue somebody who has fallen, and he is maybe hung on the person fault arrest system, and we need to provide immediate rescue to this person and not allow them or the person to be more than 10 minutes. We are going to talk more about the suspension trauma later, but it is something that OSHA is asking us to have an immediate rescue plan, okay? Then it's required to obtain, develop worker training program. Yep, describe how the plan will be enforced and evaluated. All this should be included in the plan. Training, again, workers exposed to fault hazards must be trained by a competent person. Again, that concept of competent person. Okay, at the minimum, workers must learn nature of the fault hazards in the work area. Look, there are different circumstances. We need to train them again using maybe this presentation. Fault hazard on the same level, fault hazard from equipment, fault hazard from high altitude. Because fault hazards don't only happen from high altitude. Usually people only focus on high altitude fault hazards and prevention, but we need to talk a little about the other fault hazards on the same level or falling from equipment. Okay, then correct procedures for erecting, maintaining, disassembling, inspecting fault protection systems. For example, for example, the guardrail. Okay, how are you going to install a guardrail? What are the dimensions of the guardrail? What is the materials we need to use in the guardrail? What is the level of tension or protection, the weight that the guardrail should be strong enough to support, and so on. And what equipment are you going to use to prevent fault hazards when you are installing the guardrail, for example? So there is a procedure. And then we need training about use and operation of guardrail systems, personal fault arrest systems, safety nets, and other protections, okay? And OSHA for protection standards, we need to train. Again, it's a sort of exceptional thing, but in this case, OSHA is asking us to train our workers using the standards. So we can use the table, the charts that we showed before to help them to identify where are the standards and what they are about. Then there are two categories of conventional fall protection equipment. So fall protection hazards or fall protection system can be organized in two different big categories. One is the fall protection system that prevent a fall. So people cannot fall because the system is preventing you from falling. For example, guardrails. So people, well, they could intentionally jump the guardrails, but it could be a suicide. It's not an incident or an accident. But in regular circumstances, if the guardrails was erected according to the rules, it should prevent people from falling. And we can use also personal fall restraint system. It is a sort of body harness with a lanyard that is not long enough to allow you to go to the edge of the surface in which you're working, so you cannot fall. And the other category is the fall arrest system that stop a fall after it happens. So you are falling, but you are going to be stopped by the system. Maybe a net, or maybe just using your personal fall arrest system. Okay, so you are going to be hanged, you are going to be rescued, but you don't touch the surface. Ideally, if you're using this system. So let's talk a little about guardrails. Guardrails are barriers erected to prevent workers falling. Guardrails may be capable or may be created using cable, metal, plastic, or wood, but the idea is this material should be strong enough to resist the pressure, lateral pressure. Okay, we are going to talk more about it here. Guardrails are an engineer control method. Okay, you design it, you erect it, and workers don't need to, after you erected it, they don't need to use any personal equipment. They are just there protecting workers if they are near the area to prevent them from falling. Okay, that's why it says after guardrails are installed, workers do not have to do anything to operate them. Yes, they are just there, erected there to protect them. Guardrails are classified as a passive fall protection. Okay, workers don't need to do anything to just the guardrails are there to protect them. Highway guardrails may or may not meet OSHA requirements. Often highway guardrails are lower than 42 inches in height. So why it's important? Because we have some rules about the guardrails to protect workers from falling, okay? And we are going to study these rules here. What are the requirements to have a guardrail and why sometimes these highway guardrails are not in compliance with the OSHA requirements. These are the requirements from OSHA about the guardrails. That top rail must be 39 to 45 inches height. Okay. Another way to say it is the guardrail should be 42 inches high, 3 inches lower, or 3 inches higher, but no more. That is the range for a top rail. But in some cases, in the highway guardrails, in the highways, they are not more than 39 inches high. Okay, so it's not in compliance. And also, it's a requirement. It must withstand at least 200 pounds of force, a lateral force. Okay, if somebody is pushing with a force of 200 pounds, the top rail should be strong enough to resist that pressure. Then some requirements to have a mid rail. Okay, the mid rail must withstand at least 150 pounds of force. It should be in the middle of the top rail and the toe board. Okay, but the force it should resist at least 150 pounds of lateral force. Then we have a requirement, a toe board. Okay, and sometimes people forget about the toe board, and we can realize it is important to prevent incidents too. This toe board must be a minimum of 3.5 inches height and must withstand at least 50 pounds of force. Okay, especially it is important because sometimes we are working in a surface in which there are some debris or some tools, and by accident we can kick them and we can create another accident from hauling objects from high altitude to the people who are below in a lower level. So, and there is another rule here: no more than 8 feet between posts or supports. So we can see the post here. There should be no more than 8 feet distance between one post and the other. It means that the distance could be 5, could be 6, could be 7, but it cannot be 9, 10 feet distance between one post and the other. Okay, so these are some basic rules about the guardrails in the war zone. Excuse me, I have a little dry throat now. I need to drink some water. I wish I did. Now, let's, of course, if you are going to install a guardrail, all your workers should use a personal fault arrest system. We are going to talk about personal fault arrest system in this presentation too, of course, but just in case, they should be protected, because if not, they can fall before installing the guardrails. Let's watch this video about guardrails, or it's one solution for this case. This video was created by OSHA, and let's identify the hazards and discuss the results and how can we prevent this incident, okay?
In the U.S., more than 800 construction workers die every year while on the job. Falls are the #1 cause of fatalities in construction. Falls cause 1 of every 3 construction worker deaths. These falls happen in a split second while workers are on roofs, scaffolds, ladders, bridges, and other work surfaces. But these deaths can be prevented. The video you're about to see shows how quickly falls at construction sites can lead to workers' deaths. The video will also show what employers must do so that the work can be done more safely. Employers have a responsibility to provide a safe workplace and required protective equipment. You'll see that using the right type of fall protection saves lives. Please be advised, the scenes you're about to see deal with deaths at construction sites and might be disturbing for some people. All scenes are based on true stories. 2 workers were framing the walls of a new 2-story house with a basement. They were working on the 2nd floor near an open stairwell. There was no guardrail or floor cover, and the workers were not wearing personal fall protection. After framing one section of a wall, the workers raised it and moved forward to put it into place. While moving forward, one of the workers stepped towards the unguarded stairwell to hold the side of the wall section. He fell down the unguarded stairwell opening. He fell 20 feet and landed on the concrete basement floor. He died from fatal head and internal injuries. Let's look at the events leading up to this tragic incident and see how it could have been prevented. Originally, the workers were nailing in the boards to frame a section of the new wall, and the stairwell was not protected by a guardrail. Now, the stairwell is protected by a guardrail as required by OSHA. As before, the workers are moving forward to install the completed wall section. This time, as the worker steps toward the stairwell, the guardrail stops him. He continues forward to place the frame section in place. Another way to protect workers is by putting a proper cover over the stairwell opening. The cover must be secure. As shown here, the worker steps onto the cover and continues to put the section in place. This example shows the importance of employers following OSHA's fall protection standards to ensure that workers are provided with a safe workplace. These types of construction deaths are preventable. The fall protection measures shown here save workers' lives. Use fall protection on the job. It could be the difference between life and death. If you would like more information, contact OSHA at www.osha.gov or 1-800-321-OSHA. That's 1-800-321-6742.
So in this previous video, we were introduced to another safety measure to prevent falls. It is to cover the hazard, the fall hazard, with a plank. There are some additional rules about the plank. It should have as a factor of 4. It means to be strong enough to resist the weight of the regular worker 4 times. It should be attached or secured with some nails in a way in which we cannot move this plank. And also there should be a sign on the top of the surface in which we can indicate hold, be careful with this area. So it's another way we can prevent falls. Okay, it's not very used in the roadway construction industry because we work in different circumstances, but it's good to know a little more about another method. Then we are going to talk about safety nets. Okay, safety nets are fall arrest systems. Nets are hung beneath around work areas to catch workers. Nets do not prevent falls and they do not prevent injury. Okay. After safety nets are properly installed, they provide 100% fall protection. Workers have no responsibility other than to be alert to any changes that reduce effectiveness. That's why safety nets are classified as passive fall protection. Okay, but it's interesting because people are not using nets so frequently as they did it before, because when a worker is falling, it's not falling alone. It's falling with some tools, with some pieces, materials, construction materials. We found that they could create additional problems. Okay, so the nets are usually used to prevent objects from falling now, but is it possible to use to protect workers? Yes, it is in the rule. We can use it. Included in the video we watched previously about decking operations. There is a question. They were using the net, but it is possible that a piece of deck that was falling with the worker could also create an injury to the worker falling on the same net. Okay, the same with tools and other materials that fall with the worker. Some requirements for the safety net. Safety net must be installed as close as practicable under the working surface and no more than 30 feet below the working surface. So it's a thing of acceleration. Okay, when we are falling, gravity is accelerating and increasing our weight, and the impact that we are going to have on the surface in which we impact, if it is a net, the net is maybe it's going to create an injuries to us, or maybe where our weight is going to break the net and it's going to be impractical. So there are some components that are required in the safety net: the net mesh, cantilever arms, outriggers, mounting brackets, support cables, various adapters, and also a competent person must inspect safety nets on a frequent, regular basis to ensure continuing effectiveness. So the installation of the safety net should be supervised by a qualified person, but the competent person, which is usually the foreman, must inspect safety nets on a frequent, regular basis to ensure continuing effectiveness. Okay, it is complex also to install a safety net, and you have to test the safety net to verify that this is working properly. So we have a short video here from OSHA: 5 ways to prevent workplace falls by using the personal protective equipment. So we are going to talk a little more about personal protective equipment. We'll start talking about personal protective equipment, and we are going to start with this short video from OSHA. So we watched this video. They are very focused about using the personal protective equipment, especially fall arrest system, fall restraint systems. But as I told you, there are other measures to prevent falls, like using a guardrail, using nets, using a cover to prevent people falling on an open surface. And also we can use warning signs, 6 feet distance from the edge of the hazard, fall hazard, so people can be aware about keeping a safe distance from the edge and work without any special protection. But the main method that we are using in roadway construction to protect our workers maybe is the personal protective equipment, the personal fall restraint and personal fall arrest system. Let's talk about the personal fall restraint system. It's a system that acts as a leash to prevent a worker falling. Personal fall restraint system is composed of a body harness along with an anchorage, connectors, and other necessary equipment. The other components typically include a lanyard and may also include a lifeline and other devices. The idea is to prevent workers to go to the edge. If we think in this picture, if we see this picture, we can imagine that this white lane is the border, so workers cannot go further to the border and don't fall. Actually, the requirement is the lanyard that we are using should not allow us to be more than or less than 12 inches distant from the border. Okay, that's the general rule about it. So the idea is avoid us to go to the edge or reach the edge and prevent any kind of falls. Some requirements: personal fall restraint system must meet OSHA basic specification. They include body harness. It is very similar to the personal fall arrest system. Okay, it has the same components basically. Body harness, connector, lanyard of lifeline. This is the difference. Okay, the line length should not exceed the distance of the anchor from the edge minus 12 inches. Okay, so the worker cannot reach the edge of the fall hazard. Anchorage must be located to prevent any access to an edge. Anchorage height must be correct for the line length. And also it's a recommendation to have all the anchorage point should be above our heads. That's a general suggestion now to prevent also other problems, swim problems in general, but it is more in the fall arrest system. But the main difference is this: basically, keep the lanyard or lifeline is not going to allow us to go to the edge. We cannot fall because we cannot reach the edge. Different to the fall restraint system, this is we are going to talk about a fall arrest system. Okay, now we effectively reach the edge, we are falling, and the system is going to stop us, and we are going to be suspended, waiting for co-workers to rescue the person. So a personal fall arrest system must be rigged so that the worker can never free fall more than 6 feet and cannot hit any lower level. Of course, we have to be careful about it. There are some cases in which people are using all the equipment, but they didn't measure the distance of this equipment, and the worker touched the ground level before the equipment is used. So they limit maximum arresting force on a worker to 1,800 pounds. What does it mean? So when you are falling, the acceleration for a regular worker, a regular 200 pounds weight worker, the acceleration can create such a force to the system that you can feel an impact of 2,500 pounds. And in this situation, maybe your torso is going to be protected, but your neck is not going to be protected. Your neck is going to bounce from one side to the other, and it can be broken. So that's why OSHA is requiring to limit maximum arresting force on a worker to 1,800 pounds. And we need to use some special devices to reduce this impact level. And we are talking about some attenuators. We are going to talk a little more about all these systems to reduce the impact. Okay. Bring a worker to a complete stop and limit the maximum deceleration distance to 3.5 feet. Okay, so the idea is create a sort of buffer distance between the worker body and the ground level or the surface in which he could impact if he didn't use the personal protective equipment. Okay, and also the system have enough strength to withstand twice the potential impact energy of a worker free falling a distance of 6 feet or the free fall distance permitted by the system, whichever is less. Okay, the idea is to reduce the impact. The personal fall arrest system must hold a fallen worker safely until rescue can be completed. But there is another problem, and this is the suspension trauma. And we are going to talk a little about it, but the idea is a worker, if we don't rescue a worker in this position as we are showing in this picture, he could die. But we can realize also he is using a latch here and putting all the weight of his body on his feet using this red latch instead of putting all his weight or body on these latches on the person the body harness, creating a pressure here on his leg. People can die because of this pressure, but he is using another device to protect him. So these are the parts of the personal fall arrest system: the anchor point, body harness, connectors, and now we have this descent and rescue level. So it was easy to understand it before. We used to, and now we use this mnemotechnic system: A, B, C, D. A for anchor point, B for body harness, C for connectors, and D for descent and rescue. So these are the parts of a personal fall arrest system, basically. We are not including here the body harness, but it should be. You can understand it's part of the system. But we have the lanyard here, retractive here, and the anchor point support system. So anchor secure point to attach the lifeline lanyard, deceleration device, and or a rescue equipment must support at least 5,000 pounds per worker. It's interesting. So the anchor point should be strong enough to resist this kind of pressure per worker. So if we have 2 workers, the anchor point connected to the same anchor point, it should be strong enough to resist a pressure of 10,000 pounds or 15,000 pounds if we are talking about 3 people connected to the same system. Then the body harness. We are going to watch a video about how to use all these systems together, connectors, and descent and rescue devices. So I realize it is 3 minutes past noon. So Victoria, if you have some questions, I give you the word if you have some questions.
Actually, Robinson, I think what we'll do is go ahead and wrap up for now since we're a few minutes over, and I'll send anything to you afterwards and you can just address it tomorrow. So
Okay,
thank
great.
you so much for your time today and everyone's time on this very important webinar. And we hope that this has been some good information for you, and we look forward to hosting you again tomorrow for the second part. Everyone, take care and have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
Victoria.
Yes.
Do you have a poll for the students?
Oh, you know what? I'll run it real quick. Let me launch that. If they want to go ahead and take a second and vote. And then when you close down, there is a survey that we're going to ask you to complete. that is related to what you've learned today. And if you could please take a few minutes to respond to that survey, we'd appreciate it. Looks like we're getting everybody voting here. Good. The percent is going up quickly. Get us to 80% and I can share the results, guys. Everybody must be anxious to get on to lunch because they're voting quickly, Robinson.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, we're up at 80%. I close this out, share the results. And we have 47% that chose elimination, 43% chose PPE, 7% engineer controls, and 3% administrative controls.
Yes,
So,
the
great.
hierarchy control is the most effective is elimination, of course.
Absolutely. All right, I hid those results, and when you close out, please take a few seconds to answer that survey. We'd appreciate it. And we'll see you tomorrow. Take care.
Thank you, Victoria. See you tomorrow. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.